Hello everyone. I'm taking one of my daily walks, and of course that's when my brain starts working and I begin to think about things many times. And what I'm thinking right now is that what we're seeing right now, the confusion in our governments, we're seeing a worldwide pandemic, this COVID, which is real. It's not a fake pandemic, it's real, but governments are using it to lock us down, keep us under their control. And but I'm thinking of some things while I'm walking here, and if you've watched or read the book that Ayn Rand wrote, Atlas Shrugged, and she actually predicted many of these things that we're beginning to see, that actually not beginning, we have been seeing for a while. But she was a secular atheist, but she had some foresight, and she saw what was coming from a strictly economic viewpoint, not a spiritual or a so much sociological viewpoint, but from an economic standpoint of where American government would begin to not only collude with business but take it over. It would take over businesses, and saying that well, you have to make things for the government. You must give us so much of your product, and you must sell it to us for a specified price. And in a way, that's kind of what we're beginning to see here. But Ayn Rand only saw things from a secular viewpoint, a sociological, or an economic viewpoint. However, her predictions were pretty prescient, I think. And then we have George Orwell and his book 1984, and also Animal Farm. He was also prescient, but he was actually a socialist, believe it or not. And he also foresaw and predicted really much of what we're seeing today. And except he only saw things from more of a political or sociological standpoint. You know, his book 1984, where an over, completely forceful and overreaching government runs everything, and they basically tell everyone how to live. They basically tell you, what kind of job you're going to have. They tell you how you're going to do your job. They forced the fact that you can't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And that's what George Orwell foresaw, but he only saw it from a political or sociological standpoint. But yet they were prescient. Ayn Rand and Orwell were prescient. They foresaw into the future. But what I want to talk about a bit today here is that we Christians, believers that believe in the Bible, that believe in what Scripture says, we believe in the words of Jesus Christ and the Apostle Paul, we see these things also, this type of overreaching, overbearing government that we're beginning to see now as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And I'll explain a little bit about that. Over the last 35 years, I've heard preachers talking about the New World Order and the one world government. And frankly, they were prescient also, but from a biblical or a spiritual viewpoint. That's exactly what we're seeing now. We're seeing a move towards a one world government. We're seeing a move towards a new world order. Even George H.W. Bush talked about a new world order. You see, these people have been planning this for a long time, both Republicans and Democrats. George H.W. Bush, of course, was a Republican, but he believed in this new world order. So did many other people on the Democrat side, but also a lot of Republicans. And what us Christians are saying is from a biblical standpoint of fulfillment of the words of Jesus Christ himself and the Apostle Paul. The prophecies in Matthew 24 that Jesus talked about, what he called the great falling away, or there will be a falling away first, or a great apostasy. And we are definitely seeing that today. What Christ meant about that is that things would become so spiritually dark, and men's hearts would become darker and darker, to the point that even the church would be turning away from Christ and from biblical standards. We see this in our society. We've been seeing it for the last 10 years, and it's accelerating. The loss of moral standards, the loss of moral standards of the last 2,000 years. Biblical marriage, man and woman marriage, just in the last 10 years has gone completely, as far as society is concerned, out the window. Our society has completely thrown out the biblical standard of marriage, which is God's standard, by the way. And also on the issue of abortion and other issues, where Jesus Christ himself predicted the great falling away, the great apostasy. Even church people would be throwing out biblical standards of marriage, would be throwing out the biblical standards of the definition of life. Even church people who say they're Christians but are really just confused because they have been swayed, by the demonic forces of this world and society, and they have caved to the immorality of the culture around them, instead of, sticking to biblical standards. Many in the quote-unquote church today have accepted these non-biblical standards, whereas just 10, 15 years ago, that didn't happen. And so Christ called this the great falling away, the great apostasy, the apostatizing of even the church. Even people that call themselves Christians and what's called the church would be turning away from God. They would be turning away from biblical standards. They would be worshiping the earth. They would be worshiping the things that God created rather than God who created them. And we're seeing that even in the church today. We see lots of people, even the Pope himself has embraced the global climate change. Has, many left-wing Christians have embraced, that man is destroying the planet, that we're polluting the planet beyond, and we're destroying the planet. And these people don't actually worship God, they worship the creation. And the Bible talks about that. The Apostle Paul said that in these times that men would become so enamored with themselves, so self-centered, so self-absorbed, that they would no longer have, they would no longer even have compassion for the human race. And that's exactly what we're seeing. You know, people today, they call abortion, it's a right. I mean, I just I sent an email to one of my senators a couple of weeks ago and saying, don't pass that bill with and get rid of the Hyde Amendment, which has protected people from having to pay for abortions for the last 40 years. And he sent me back just kind of a terse email saying, women have a constitutional right to an abortion. You see, that's a constitutional right, to an abortion. I'm like, this generation has completely forgotten the sanctity of human life. And our politicians preach at us in a self-righteous way that women have they have a constitutional right to an abortion. In other words, a woman has a constitutional right to kill her own child.